my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
The Black American boxing fan base hadn't had a great heavyweight since the 90s. You see, I find it very interesting, how there are people here in this community that will sit here and just talk down on the FBA or so-called BA fighter and be so proud whenever the FBA or so-called BA fighter is not present. Why hasn't anyone ever talked about the white American fighter and how they're not present in the sport of boxing? You see, people can have conversations about how the FBA or so-called BA fighter isn't dominating in a certain division, but never talk about the white American fighter not being present at all in the sport of boxing. Has anyone ever asked how the white American boxing fan feel not having anyone to represent them? Because that's the question that's always asked about the foundation of Black American or so-called BA American fan. When it comes to the heavyweight division, a lot of these anti-Black boxing fans will proudly say that the foundation of Black American or so-called BA American don't have any fighters past 175 pounds. They'll say those things. They'll talk about the divisions that the foundation of Black American or so-called BA American fighter are not present at, but won't do the same for the white American fighter. And also, there's only been one Mexican heavyweight champion throughout the history of the sport of boxing, and the Mexican fighter has never been in question for why they've never had any success at the heavyweight division. Andy Ruiz Jr. was only world champion for a little less than 4 months. Nobody has ever questioned why Japanese fighters hadn't had any success past 126 pounds. Why hasn't there been a Chinese world champion past 122 pounds? Those questions are never asked. No one's ever said those fan bases are mad because their fighters are not dominant at a certain weight class. It's always about how we feel about not having a certain fighter not being present at a certain weight class. Y'all don't find that interesting? Because I sure in the hell do. I find that very interesting. People, they celebrate when the FBA or so-called BA fighter is non-present. They'll say, well, your fighters are only good at this certain weight classes. But then when you look at boxing as a whole, that's never a conversation when it comes to the lower weight division. Why can't Asian fighters have any success past 122 pounds? Why haven't they made a mark past 122 pounds? Why hasn't there been an Asian heavyweight champion? What is stopping Asian fighters from becoming the heavyweight champion? And of course, I'm sure there has been an Asian fighter that has some success in the sport of boxing past the little man division. I'm sure there has been. But the reality is that history has shown that Asian fighters tend to not have any success past the little man division. And the ones that had success past the little man division are the exceptions and not the rule. You see, those fans are never asked about how they feel about now having a fighter that's not present in a certain weight class. The Asian boxing community are never, ever trolled. They're never being asked, why can't your fighters be successful past the little man division? Why are only your fighters successful in the little man division? Why haven't any of your fighters made a mark anywhere past the little man division? Why aren't Mexican fighters successful at the heavyweight division? That's a question that's never been asked. The Mexican fan base, which is a pretty large fan base, are never trolled. They're never questioned about their fighters not being very present or not being present at all at the heavyweight division. And they can't say, well, Mexican fighters are not that big. That's a damn lie. That's a damn lie. There's some big boys, but they haven't had any success. I mean, they've had some good contenders, but the contenders that they've had seem to not be able to win a world title. And that's never a question for the Mexican boxing community. So people can come online, these anti-black boxing fans literally can come online and be proud that a foundational black American fighter or so-called BA fighter is not present in a certain weight class at this moment. They are proud about that. They are happy about that. They are happy that when a foundational black American fighter is not present at a certain weight class at the moment. And they find some type of joy when they think that the FBA or so-called BA community feels some type of way about that. But in all actuality, the FBA or so-called BA community really don't care.